Thank you to the other poets who read tonight. Thank you for your work. Very honored to be in the presence of Miss Stein, an unexpected pleasure. Could never have guessed that. To finally hear the rose, the way the rose is meant to be. Thank you to my friends and family and new friends and so many poets here tonight. This is a stellar audience, and I'm very honored to be here. Always the pen. Is there going to be a last-minute revision? Or it just feels good to have one? I think that's what it is. Now I should add that the light here is heartbreakingly beautiful. The marsh is green gold, the creek water clear. How there comes a desire simply to merge with it, to lie down, curl one's body into an earth shape, die with the leaves, bend into that lucent sky, become the vagabond, the wanderer, the invisible, the other, the lost child that every child is, the one before becoming, before they made us who we are, the voice that is the undersinging, the one we have forgotten. We have to give time up for a while and keep an eye on it. This big poem that I'm going to read is many poems can be many things. This one was many things. I think tonight it's my return to writing poem. If you've lived long enough, there are always times when you don't write, and then there are other times when you come back. Some of you have been in this landscape, and probably all of you have been in the internal landscape. In the sandhills. Down in the dunes is a language place. Lost U-vowel of the sound turned round. Guts of the rabbits strewn over ground. Grit of the fir cones peeled by squirrels. No one is here. Shadow of a lost imagined pony skin, lichen scab creeps over the dune ridge. Trees grown up, grown over, an acre of sand. Layer of forest floor, tangle of alder, closing the pathways. Tongue of cold sand, far up inland, a half-mile from shore. I want it back. I want it all clean. I want Mozart in a piano-echoed room, scales in thirds. I want my mother making shapes of everything, poems in thin air. My father singing hymns in the car, all the way from Sable River to Liverpool, Hunts Point, Somerville, and Port Mattoon. I want to be always in that car when we slow down for the turn at Robertson's Lake. The big rock ledge with the lemonade springs where the bluebird sings, the big rock candy mountain. I want to be in that clear, sweet space. I want to write my poems then, grow up again, breathe in that clean, light air. I want to have my babies then, take them to the sandhills, stay in that sheltered place. I want my clear syllables to drop on that sand. I want the rain to pelt down our bareback skins as we ride those pretend ponies, my sister and I, over the high white dunes. I want to speak the sounds I was born to speak. Be the music that played me safe in that car as we rolled down the clay-backed road that followed the river down the flat salt marsh to the edge of the grandmother's country. I want not to have lost what I am looking for now. My sounds are down there, back in those dunes, down at the cold green edge, where we slid down the hot white sand into the cool damp gray, where roots began and alder intersected. hid the trails that only rabbits crossed, the place the tangles started. I want to lie back there until the words form in my mouth out of my land and my ground, my crying places, myself simple, not even happiness. A bark, a yell, an arc of singing, a breath, a sound. Is it over? All that over? Is that where my child, daughter, would have gone? She too over? This is so bare. Bare as a bone of childhood. If you could find your own small bone. This next one, Eternal Lines, is for my mother, Eileen Lloyd, and it's all tied up with Shakespeare's Sonnet 18. You'll know which one the minute you hear it. When you're a kid, you know, the world is just there, and our mother used to, she would just say stuff. She would spout off a line, and I didn't know that it wasn't hers until I grew up and read books. And one of our best summers was the summer when she was preparing the Scottish play for for a high school performance. So we got to, you know, have the damn spot and all that too. But here's another one. It's called Eternal Lines, and it's a sonnet because it has to be. My mother's spouted lines as if they were her own. I could compare thee, she might say. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? The poem's truth came later, here or there. She'd grafted life to art. The darling buds of May were mine. His gold complexion dimmed my father's secret way. The eye of heaven shined on us and her, until the stroke that found her vein and played its course took all her words away. My love for her was locked inside the poem then, but now I read to her, and she responds to sound without the sense, receives the lines she gave. Conceit of childhood, all at once, unmade. So we're getting a bit of the voice of the girl in the first part of the book. Do you know what an L chamber is? Most of you, the L chamber, okay, it's ELL, but it's just the little, on a Cape Cod house, she said, to get at my, on a Cape Cod house, you have the little house, and then it's the piece that sticks out the back at right angles, the small piece out the back, and up on the top of that is a little chamber in the L of the house. And the one in my grandmother's house was a bit scary and small. So there's an L chamber in the poem. A girl awake. A girl awake in the L chamber. Nightlight only a moon. Fear in every limb. Low voices in the kitchen downstairs, and cats with kittens kneading under the small back porch. Always some hidden thing, keeping its life going by stealth in mouthfuls. Water in the near-empty jam jars, sluicing out the last sweetness for a glass of summer lemonade. What a waste, my father said when I followed him out to the furthest rock over the ocean. You should have been a boy. More energy than you know what to do with. And then we should harness the sea. What was I? Some wild god to steal his chariot out of the waves and haul the familiar sun across a mackerel sky? Not the boy, because I am the girl. Can they see me? My ruched white bathing suit with silver threads? Was I pretty? Hair tied up in rags? In the breakers, I would keep up with him until the water rose over my head. His bare back ahead of me, my arms, my legs, not knowing what I was. Traveling with my mother. She looks out from a great distance as if she were riding a boat. I can't go that way, she says. She turns from the window, away from her left side, which follows her. You know, she says. Pale blue walls, at the top of the white chenille bed cover, a yellow flower. Down in the bed floating, see? See something gone. Flower comes back, light on that side. Legs inside and cover over. Feet stay out. Now I pull the top cover back. I found it, she says, and strokes the yellow flower. She rides the boat a long way. I speak to her. She says, yes, yes. The bed looks small and far, so long to slide down, blue and soft, light and not. Tied back, so white, light in. I say I know. As long as it is wide, her room, iron and stubborn, the bed. Settle under. She wraps her head up, holds the sheet up to her nose. Listen, listen. Breathe. It's cold. Slide up. The distance from her bed to the door is the distance of mountains. We go it together. Slow music. A slow music starts. You know it. It's old, older than you. This music cuts a line, shoulder to hip, crossing the heart. Wait for it to deepen on its fateful way. It passes through you, and when you turn to it, turn in, not towards. Take this in to the part of you that calls itself home. You're already changed. Cannot go back. Listen. You're not unusual, unrealistic, even unreliable. Until this morning, you were unloved, untouchable, untouched. So music starts, all of it, all for you, marked now, spoken for, even though you don't believe it, sung. We should all have a day like that once in a while. Well, I'm going to read you The Snakes Transform in the Woodpile. This is a thing that happens in woodpiles, I guess, everywhere there are snakes. And these are Nova Scotian snakes, and they're not that big, but it's so amazing. The first time I saw a snake skin, I think the thing that struck me most, I didn't even know what it was at first. They're translucent practically. And you can see every little scale. And when you look closely, you can see that the skin goes right over the eye. I don't know why that struck me, but you just don't think of the eye being part of the transformation. So here they are. The snakes transform in the woodpile. Even the eyes molt, growing larger under the skin that covers them. A skin that thin, purely transparent, holding them intact so they can do their work. What do they see at the moment of molting? The snake that was, the snake that will become, split, blind, as the lost world memorizes itself, still present in the cells that lift off, as light as paper. The final eye looks inward, sighting back along the spinal tube, the aperture quiescent, until a rippling signal prompts the inverse motion, peeling then from now, and ends the doubled world. Which must be what her eyes see as she lies, old woman in her hospital bed, old aunt staring out. Watching her sleep, 3 nights now, an arm got loose, inscribed the air, drew the hand along her shoulder, round the hairline, then her breast, all shrunken in, but curved, the way that hand was touching it. She dropped her head towards her shoulder, waited for the arm, then moved her restless mouth against its skin, as if she wanted to caress and encourage what was hers, what was passing away. They looked like cobwebs, the skins in the woodpile. They looked like strips of cloth, old nylons in a bureau drawer, between the lengths of spruce wood piled up for winter. This was their sequestered place. Like sticks, the snakes must have lain there afterwards. Like lovers, startled, still too new to move. And then their eyes would open. Ron asked me if I would read their boy. I asked him if he had a request, and I had already got one of them. We all have loss. It's life. This is a particular loss at a particular time for a particular boy in Cape Breton. But it's for all of us. The poem is called Their Boy. There are 4 of them up on that sun-struck hill, 2 in grieving agony for their dead son, 2 walking to comfort them, walking into the light, holding on to him all the long afternoon, holding his presence, this absence of his presence, which is the light itself, the snow's blindness, the breathing glare. She can feel him, his mother, and the boy's father knows he must keep walking to hold her holding of him. It's like walking with her pregnant all those Sundays, seeing her big and round and stretched, imagining their boy coming towards them, in through their twined bodies, coming into them. They go between the trees, part from one another, like shades themselves, pulling his image down to them. Snow underfoot, wet tree trunks, raw wind, snapped branches. They're holding it open, an unfurled sunlit day. Take an arm, take my eye, wanting to bargain. Their coats are unbuttoned. Friends slip an arm through an arm. They pace on. It's like a search, the body already found, pacing, with him still close, still in them, between them. There's a voice on the wind they can't hear anymore. Mom, Dad, figures pacing, giving him up. Now we're going to go to the animal world. It's a funny thing. It was a while, you know, I think as most first books, finally finishing it, finally finding a publisher. And Vox Humana, as well as meaning, you know, the human voice in Latin, which you all know, is also the term for an organ stop. It's on big, huge church organs. It's on the little pump organs in the parlor. And it's the little reedy sound, and I loved it as a kid because it had a particular hummy, soft sound, and it's supposed to sound like the human voice. And there's a Vox Angelica and a Vox Celeste and all kinds of them. But wouldn't you know it, the organ stop didn't happen in any of the other poems, and it didn't happen in the poem called Vox Humana. It happened, well, it happened in a poem called Vox Animalia, and I'm not going to, I don't think I can explain why, but I was at Banff and I was reading about larynxes, I think because I was writing about voice. That makes sense. And I was fascinated by this passage about the porcupine's larynx. Well, we love porcupines. I mean, they are a thing unto themselves. And I remember the night I was leaving, of course I never finish it when I'm supposed to, and I still had these library books out, and I was madly writing down these little bits about the porcupine's larynx. And we don't really know what makes poems come. It's like getting a stone caught in your shoe or something, these things, right? They just get hold of you. And then one day, they come out. So here it is. So this has got, you'll find out what it's got in it. And there's only one thing I want to make sure. Probably a lot of you know about those little whistles that your grandfather, or maybe your great-grandfather, depending on your generation, would make by tapping on the alder, and it makes the skin slide off the alder, and then if you cut it the right way, you get a little whistle. I can't do it, but I remember it. I remember it. So, that's all you need to get through this poem. Vox Animalia. A piece of alder, tap, 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 back of the jackknife, and the bark skin comes off. Slides, sap smoothing. Then the cut, just the angle needed for sound. Length of your index finger, whistle, little pipe. So the porcupine, windpipe, larynx tipped back to make those human sounds. Have you heard them? Nighttime in the spruce boughs, insistent cries. And if you could see their feet, you would never kill one. Feet like a human baby's feet. Voice calling out on a breath that makes love mates all night in the spruce trees. Something between a holler and a grunt. A voice that imitates our young, holds a note and sobs on it, bows, creaking, rubbing, and then a little cough. Alone in the tent, we lie and listen. No one wants a porcupine. Quills filled with air. Slow moving, forepaws like a beaver's, insatiable, all night eating apple boughs, all night loving, quills softened. They sound like us, another vox humana, like the organ pipe, relic in the parlor, pump organ, stops labeled vox, 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 tremulo, bellows filling air. Take this creature into your throat pipe, gristle, heft, and hide, rasp, slide the whistle. The alder cuts its throat to speak its sound. That porcupine, I love that porcupine. Well, we can have a few more. Yeah, we can have some more poems, because we need to go somewhere else now. This is the part where you get to imagine you're somebody else. That's my favorite. It was natural to me. You know, I was thinking, I came to Ottawa, God knows, sometime in the late 70s, and was in a clown workshop that was in the back of the NAC, and we walked on tight ropes and made masks with Richard Pachenko. You know, there's a lot of distillation if you live long enough to write your poems. A lot of things get stilled. So the sense of mask was just built in, all those layers of papier-mâché, and making tangible what actors do, which is step inside the other. Step inside the other, that was the plan. So where will we go here? One of the ways I did that, I'll read you part of the poem, you can buy the book and get the rest. But I got fascinated by Ophelia. I think that's the young girl persona, and then finding another one, because I imagine Ophelia the tomboy, because she did cross that willow, and I wanted her to run away from Elsinore and go away with the traveling players and get out of there. But somebody else wanted it to be different, wrote it a long time ago. Anyway, I wrote a thing called Ophelia's Book, and I'll read you some pieces from it. I imagined her. It started because I had bronchitis one winter. There's always a personal hook somehow. And I used some of the historical or source names like Amleth and Garutha, so it wouldn't be so much like that famous play. But really it's all about playing and walking inside the other, and then you're there. So this is a segment of Ophelia's Book. Elsinore, winter, bronchitis again, a month of rain. Last night Garutha came to sit with me. I saw her coming down the passage. Nurse had left the door ajar. Her hair unloosed. She said she couldn't sleep and came to see if I was wakened too. She stayed and read to me. Mid-March. The rain is constant, caressing, as nothing else is. I saw him this morning. He never stops now. Illness, the excuse. Still a fever, the cough. Rain. March, night. Garutha questions me. I tell her Amleth sends me letters, nothing more. Spring, a thin frost. Walked outside this morning, and the lungs almost clear. Such sweet relief. There are few secrets now. Himself, I think he has forgotten midsummer. Oh, my love, every breath goes out of my body when I think of that. An ebony hand, a balustrade, the viol's curling head, your sweet weight. It will not do to write this down. April, false spring, Garutha restless. If my light burns at night, she will come in. May, month's end. He came to me. His coat felt rough, so black. I found a tri-blossom flower, red-veined with white petals. It has a star-shaped heart, almost blue. Amleth leaves for Wittenberg next month. He promises to write this time, though not in German. I keep his likeness in a locket. August. My tutor in the morning, then hours to myself. I like to climb up high on the rocks. When Garutha admonishes me, I wait until she goes out on one of her retreats. Tonight she was late and the king in a temper. I love the willow at the brook. I can cross now, my balance nearly perfect. Mid-September. Amleth writes, I have every letter saved. Something has changed in me. When the willow calls, I go and lie there. The sound of the water is like wind through pipes. I think tonight I'm going to read you Penthesilia's Horse. Penthesilea was queen of the Amazons. You can find little tiny bits about her in the Iliad. And she led the Trojan army into battle to avenge Hector's death. She was a friend of Andromache, Hector's wife. And during this particular battle with the Greek forces, Penthesilea was one of the few people who ever met Achilles in hand-to-hand combat. Achilles, the slayer of Hector. But this piece is written, well, the horse, Penthesilia's horse, speaks and remembers the day. Penthesilia's Horse. I knew by morning this was our last day. She knew too, in the way humans know things. They watch us for signs. I longed for her each time she went away. No one could ride me like her. I wanted her legs around me. This was the first time she dressed me for battle, and I was nervous. When Achilles saw her, he rode in close. I could smell old hay barns and rotting mint. I saw in his face how he wanted her, the boy in her and the woman too. The sweat ran from his arms. She went straight for him. For Andromache she did this. She breathed into my neck. Our swiftness carried the wind. Her hands pushed under the blades of my shoulders. 3 times we pulled in close, made feint of striking. He fell half sideways, jabbing at nothing. I saw his big arms, sweat on each hair. She pulled off her helmet so her hair streamed out. I saw the look in his eyes. It should all stop there. They should stay there. In the memory of horses, that is just how they are. But he let us close in, then held back the blow. She struck, he fell, she moved in. Then his weight came on top of us. He grappled in her arms. She whispered, "Run, Shinkala." I felt her breath go. He had her. I rolled forward. I wanted to crush him. But she grabbed for my mane. Then his sword split the joint of her elbow. When she fell, her eyes went away from me. I raised up to kill him and saw her between us. He spoiled her then, without holding back. When he had finished, he lifted her up. I saw how Achilles was shocked not to have her. This was Penthesilea. She belonged to no one. Maybe 2 more poems, something like that. Does that feel okay? And I'm just going to go back. I'm going to go back and read you a love poem. I just think we need a little love in here. Let me It's right here. This is Shelter. Shelter. We were there in that dark with the bleat and the crying around us. I could still hear you in that other language, speaking to them, to the lambs. I stood still and wouldn't move, fearful to go and fearful to stay. The storm's voice coming from without, the animal's voice within. And I knew them, that they were safe now. Then the luxury of the lambs came down, and you were there where you wished to be, upon me, rippling out and outer with a sound of wind over wind, and rain over rain, of wool over wool, and flesh over flesh, the sound of a sound folding into itself, until my bones were glad to be that frame over which my skin, like a tent, had stretched itself. This last poem is called Arioso. It's pure voice. Arioso is a musical term for a place between speech, rhythm, and song. I think that's a good place for all of us poets to be, so that's where we're going to go. Arioso. Then the voice will come and fill up the spaces in the violins. The scraped bellies of the cellos will fill, and the violas, the double basses the size of children, each one holding a voice. And that voice will mount up, will press into the spaces between things, the layers of socks folded, of woolen shirts in bureau drawers, of empty coat sleeves, hats without heads. It will press between the edges of bricks, the tails of rats lying close in a cold wind. It will wind into the backs of clouds. It will howl. It will enter every bowl that has ever held soup. It will sing for its supper. It will sup. It will whine and then plead. It will soften. And then it will ask, are you warm enough? Have you light? Are you cold? Would you like something to eat? Is there someone with you? Are you alone? And then you will cry and lie down in your feather bed and feel the great skims of your loneliness lifting away from you. Someone will speak to you and a change come over you. Your skin will be moist and fresh and remember itself, its own name. Then the winnowing will come through you and you will sit up and laugh and go out under the trees, and a coil unwind in your throat, and the arc of your singing will come out. Thank you.